Is this the area where you see Uber winning in its diversification strategy through that delivery business?
Absolutely. I mean, when you go to business school, they teach you that companies shouldn't diversify, that investors should diversify, and companies should sort of stick to their core competency. I think Uber is illustrating that the rules have changed in the platform world. The fact that they diversified into Uber Eats 3 or 4 years ago when, Travis Kalanick had the unlimited sort of spending allowance from his investors has really helped them during COVID. I mean, look at the numbers. I mean, 60% of their gross bookings in Q4 2020 came from Eats. They are generating more bookings from this than DoorDash is. But I'm also struck by how the ride-sharing business is recovering. We're back up to close to $7 billion in bookings there. And so, this bodes well for Uber's future because eventually the margins are going to be higher in the ride-share business than in the Eats business.
Talk to us about the platform, really. When you're combining all together, the monthly active platform customers was down 16%, 93 million. That was better than expected. Do you see that roaring back? How much do we see it depending on this cross-pollination between those that want to drive and those that want to order?
Well, I think that we're going to see dramatic increases in active platform users over 2021. If you compare it to 2020, and part of that is just people who were using Uber actively in 2019, but are sitting at home a lot more, starting to come back onto the platform. And so I expect that to grow by double-digit percentages, maybe 20, 30% over the year. Part of it is also going to be driven by people as they get back to work, as they start to go into the office, as sort of the physical world economy really starts to flourish again in the second half of 2021. People in densely populated urban areas are probably going to shy away from mass transit because of continuing concerns about COVID and move towards ride sharing. And so we'll both have customers returning, but also acquisition of new customers who want a different sort of perhaps form of public transportation where they feel a greater sense of control over their immediate space.
Arun, I want to get your thoughts here about sort of what we can learn from what's been going on in the pandemic and the companies that have managed to sort of not only survive, but at least work their way through it. You talk about a company here in Uber that doesn't really own anything physical, at least. If they had a competitor, a cab company or a company that actually owned physical cars, they would probably be out of business right now. Is there some sort of implication we can learn from this as to how companies structure themselves going forward? Is it the asset-light model basically going to be the norm going forward?
We're certainly going to see a much greater level of interest in the asset-light model because, as you point out, the pandemic has demonstrated that this is much more resilient to the kind of economic shock we've just gone through. If you compare Uber to Hertz, Uber has seen significant stock market gains over the last year. Even as their revenues from rideshare took dramatic hits in Q2 of 2020, at the same time, Hertz was filing for bankruptcy and going through this restructuring. And the big difference is that both companies suffered significant top-line hits, but Uber's bottom line impact was a lot less because they don't hold the assets that are involved in the provision of the transportation, whereas Hertz is sitting on the leases of hundreds of thousands of cars and has to sort of carry those costs even as it's taking the revenue hit. And so I think we're seeing a similar kind of trend play out with Airbnb. Airbnb also has the advantage of being more nimble and agile and flexible and being able to sort of move away from, relying on big cities for its demand to relying on more niche areas and sort of longer term stays. So they're able to turn on a dime much faster than the traditional hotel chains. But they also have a different cost structure from a hotel franchisee who still has to carry the costs associated with empty rooms, even as the revenue takes a hit. So
Yeah.
certainly, like, in many other physical world industries, we're going to have a lot of investors and a lot of companies taking a very close look at the platform asset-light model.
We just have about a minute left. Do you see Uber shifting to being a price setter instead of a price taker, given now that maybe they don't need to undercut competition to gain market share?
I think in the rideshare business, they certainly are going to increasingly become a price setter. In the food delivery business, I still see competition remaining intense. This is a business with very low barriers to entry. You've got DoorDash, the big competitor, in there already. You've got Amazon Prime sort of waiting in the wings. So local logistics. So as they expand out of restaurants and into local grocery delivery as well, the market expands, but the industry becomes more competitive. And so it's hard for me to see Uber Eats leading the way on price setting in that sector, but certainly in the rideshare sector, I see them as, like, being able to dictate the terms, like, as 2021 progresses.